Okay, well, welcome everybody to NASCAD Artwork Alumni Talks. While our community is a global one, our school, and by extension our talks, are hosted in Chibuktuk in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We're honored to gather, speak, and make artwork here. My name is Molly Cronin, and I am the host of NASCAD Artwork. And each month I have the extreme pleasure of meeting with two of our esteemed alum to talk about where their practices and careers have taken them in their time since NASCAD. And we'll be going over a series of questions today to kind of guide our discussion. And if you have questions for Doug and Dorothée, please pop them into our chat, and then I will answer them towards the end of the talk. But yes, today I'm joined by Dorothée Rosen, BFA 2005, and Doug Bamford, BFA 1995, and we're going to be talking about sustainability in our practices as artists. So Dorothée and Doug, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
So to get us started, maybe you could just give us like a quick intro. Dorothée, we'll start with you perhaps, and tell us a bit about your practice and where you're based.
Okay, I'm a goldsmith in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and that's where I work. I have a studio in the backyard of my home in the Hydrostone area, and I'm very happy here.
Very nice. Doug, same to you.
I'm a ceramics artist and educator based just outside of the town of Lunenburg on the south shore of Nova Scotia.
Wow, two very beautiful places.
I'm broadcasting today from my beautiful studio in Garden Lots, Nova Scotia.
Very nice. Wonderful. And let's talk a little bit, take it back in time a little bit and talk about your time at NASCAD. Doug, what were you studying at NASCAD? Who were you working with? And what was the university like at the time?
I started off my journey as a potter, a ceramic artist, in the late 60s, actually, at Sheridan College. And I went to Sheridan, became a potter. Actually, I became a finely crafted knob. I was really indoctrinated in the philosophy of craftsmanship and not a whole lot of content. After 20 years of working, being self-employed as an artist, a maker in Ontario, I got really tired of being self-employed. And I felt like I did not start off my career to be one of Santa's elves, going to craft shows at Christmas time, a gift maker. And a bunch of my friends in Toronto were NASCAD alumni. And they said, you should go to NASCAD. We've been telling you this for years. So I decided I would come to NASCAD and get a B.Ed and become a high school art teacher and share my love of making things with kids. Anyways, I did come to NASCAD and I swore I would not deviate from my critical path in becoming an art teacher. And I bumped into the infamous Walter Offstrom. Instantly threw me off that critical path and said, well, what ceramic courses are you taking? And I said, none. I'm studying art education. He said, oh, forget that. And he signed me up for a class and the rest. And I did get to be ed, but as I was graduating, Walter and Neil Forrest both said, you should stay here and be the technician. And the rest is history. I stayed for 25 years.
Well, aren't we lucky?
The art college was fabulous. It was a wonderful job. I loved every minute of it.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you, Walter, for delivering us to you that way. Dorothée, what about you? What was your time like at NASCAD, and who were you working with, and what was the university like at the time?
Yeah, so I have a degree in jewelry design and metalsmithing with a minor in art history with focus craft. At the time, there was no such thing as craft history officially, so it was art history, but it took all craft courses with the abominable Sandra Alfoldi, the late fantastic teacher. She was great. And my professors at NASCAD were mainly Pamela Ritchie and Keon Sun. They're both still, to this day, artists in their own right, practicing and still inspiring to me. In fact, there's a video of Pam on my YouTube channel where we talk about the training techniques at NASCAD and how she taught and forged her students, I would say. And yeah, I think that the background in the addition of the craft history was really helpful. I also took some courses at Dalhousie in anthropology to kind of support that because jewelry moves towards the body, so it really involves people. And it was an amazing time. The inquisitiveness and the critical thinking were so alive, and at the same time, the training was really fantastic. And we could be in the studio all night long. So I had small kids. I would be in the studio until 4 a.m. and get up at 6 with my kids, and it was a great time.
Is there anything you mentioned some few qualities that I think you've carried with you, but are there any particular lessons or qualities about your education at NASCAD that you've maybe carried into your practice now, Dorothée?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that's something that when I work with mentees from different schools,
Mm-hmm.
I lack. I don't see that. And the main thing with that would be that to never be satisfied with your first idea, the first design answer, if you will, but to always push further or dig deeper and inquire more. The striving for excellence at that time, both in execution and in design, were really strong.
Yeah.
And at the same time, stay loose and don't look for, don't like jump to conclusions, but rather, be open, see, perceive, work with it, and then, play, and then something will arise. So there's kind of things like looking at magazines upside down to look for textures or lines, things like that. I still do that
Mm.
to this day. Like these kinds of explorations are still
Yeah.
happening.
Oh, wonderful. It's so fun to have you both join from your studio spaces or spaces where you have like your studio practice and work. So it's great to have that as a background. Thank you. Um, Doug, same question to you. Was there something about the kind of education at NASCAD that you've carried with you into your practice now?
Well, I touched on that in talking about the difference
Yeah.
between the Sheridan College education, which was really a skills-based practice, as opposed to NASCAD, where it was much more conceptual. And at the time when I arrived in 1991, the great heyday of conceptual art had passed,
Hmm.
although all the players were still teaching. So we still had Jerry and Gary and David Aspinall. And Walter Ostrom was one of those faculty who had been brought up from the USA to work at NASCAD during the heyday of the conceptual period. So concept, meaning, and content, we just sort of learned how to put that into the work as well
Hmm.
as make it well. So the big thing I learned from my teachers was that it all has meaning. Above and beyond the fact that you are making something which has meaning in itself. You're not a consumer, you're a maker. And we think differently than consumers. And we have the opportunity to express messages, commemorate historical history, blah, 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 on your dishes and plates.
Well, let's get into a conversation about making. We're here today to talk about sustainability, about kind of like environmental and ethical considerations in our practices. And we're talking about two very distinct disciplines here, although both kind of under the umbrella of, craft practices. And Dorothée, I know that you have lots to say about metalsmithing and goldsmithing and the sort of environmental and ethical considerations there. Can you tell us a bit about what goes into ethically sourcing gemstones and precious metals like gold and silver, and what strategies you've forged, pun not intended, in your practice?
That's a good one. Yeah, it is a really, really big topic. I would say with gemstones, it's trickier, definitely for
Mm,
sourcing, because uh, in the end, sustainability is about traceability, and especially colored gemstones are notoriously difficult to track. Gemstones, of course, go through not just the mining, but then also the cutting, polishing process. So, and that often happens in different places. A lot of it has to do with having trusted suppliers and knowing, like my sapphire supplier, for example, they have traveled to some of the mines themselves, so they have seen the practices on the ground. And my diamond supplier has an incredibly tight. This is natural Canadian diamonds, an
mhm,
incredibly tight tracing system. He also sources from Botswana, which has a really great diamond story there as well, especially for women. But yeah, it's very complicated. I would say uh, the gold and silver sourcing is a big is a big topic for me, where I really dug into it because I wanted to make a difference. I feel that there we can make a difference, and there's a lot of misconception about traceability and where things come from and what's
mm.
ethical and what isn't ethical. I'll talk maybe about recycled gold a little later and the myths around that. But let's maybe look at that slide real quick about traceability, if we can, because you want to know. Basically, you want to, as a maker as well as a consumer, really, you want to be looking at where does your gold come from.
Mm,
Can you trace it to the mine? Are the human rights and environmental protection, are they part of the process with that particular mine? And do the materials that you're offering your clients, do they align with the sustainable development goals, the international ones? And then, of course, are you communicating that with your clients?
mhm.
Because there are maybe, is there a second slide? Do I have a second slide? I think so. Yeah, yeah. It's mining affects a huge number of people if it's artisanal mining. Commercial mining, few people, big machines, big environmental destruction. But the artisanal miners, there are a lot of people. 150 million people are involved in artisanal mining, and if that is not controlled, or like if somebody isn't watching, if these people are not being given the opportunity to do things in environmental and ethical way by being part of a bigger organization, then the environmental destruction can be horrendous. And there's a really great film about that. There are two great films about it. The River of Gold talks about the destruction of the Amazon River,
Mhm.
and The Shadow of Gold is another film, which in fact was the film that originally inspired me. But these are the questions you want to ask so that you can make a positive impact, and that you can also talk to your clients about it, which in the end becomes a selling point. Because
Mm,
for me, this is what I do for a living. And in order to differentiate myself from everybody else, yes, I have to have good design, but I also have to, it helps to have another angle. And sustainability is um, it's a really good one these days. And you have to cross your T's and dot your I's, and really make sure you're following uh, all the traceability. And maybe
yeah.
can I talk about fair mind here, or you want
Yeah.
to talk about that later? Yeah. So um, I was introduced to the idea of fair mind and fair trade, gold and silver, at the gold conference in New York City, where I traveled to, courtesy of the creative industries. What's it called? Industry Growth Fund.
Mhm.
And I was introduced there to these alternatives metals which have this kind of traceability. They've been founded by the Alliance for Responsible Mining, and I bought in. I was so touched by the benefits you can make in the world of these people
Hmm.
and their environments that I wanted to become a licensee, and have been now for a number of years, and I'm very proud of it. And I really feel strongly that that's an amazing way to make a difference. And
Hmm.
NASCAD is also a Fairmind licensee, which is a fantastic opportunity for those students.
There you go. Good for NASCAD.
Mhm.
Well, and it makes so much sense to me to think about these objects, these pieces that are so beautiful that we will also want them to come from a place that is beautiful or unharmful, right? So I think those practices make
It,
wonderful sense.
it
Yeah.
might be worth mentioning that the Ocean Street mine site in Sydney Mines, for example, is one of
Hmm.
the 10 most polluted sites we have.
Right.
There's polluted old mine shafts between Preston and Burnside and all over the place in Nova Scotia, and mining disasters such as the Poly mine disaster in
Yeah.
BC. And we had a more recent one up north. It's gold mining commercially is incredibly harmful, and this can make a difference.
Okay. Very good to know. Doug, same question to you. Can you tell us a little bit about where the ethical and or environmental concerns are in your practice and what strategies you've come to make more sustainable or ethical work?
Yeah, I'm trying to be more conscious of the ethical decisions I make in my practice. Uh, Again, back in the 70s, we were pretty environmentally aware, as
Mhm.
we could be. And at that time, one of the famous journals on ceramics called Studio Potter did publish a whole issue on the effects of mining clay, glazed materials, the energy usage involved in kiln firing, and blah, 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 blah. And it's interesting how after the 70s environmental movement, there was kind of a sleeping period where cars just got bigger and bigger
Mm.
and more energy. And those of us who were into environmentalism were going, what the hell's going on here? Anyhow, when I came to work at NASCAD, one of the first questions in getting that job was how would you save 50% of our budget, which is going to be cut, um, and keep us going? Well, I said, well, your energy cost must be the highest cost. Yes. Well, why don't we fire lower? So we moved our firing temperature down from cone 10 to cone 6. We are one of the first institutions in North America to do that. And people from all over the USA came to study with us to learn about cone 6 firing. After doing that, when we moved to the Port campus, there was an even bigger emphasis on small electric kilns.
Mm.
And I made the rule that we weren't going to fire the higher temperatures in the little electric kilns, but they would be saved for the earthenware 04, which is even lower. And those kilns lasted infinitely longer than the kilns at the old campus that were being fired at all kinds of temperatures. In
Right.
fact, in the 10 years I was there, we didn't replace one kiln, where we used to buy a new kiln every year. Anyhow, and I realized, I just became aware that working in earthenware was the ethical thing to do in Nova Scotia.
Mm.
For me, I was aware of that. I felt I had to do it. So my practice became uh, an earthenware practice. There's lots of earthenware clay in Nova Scotia. It just doesn't vitrify hard. So it remains soft and porous. And interestingly enough, my first term at NASCAD, Walter Ostrom came into my studio and put this very magazine on my desk, Gardens Illustrated. And in it, there's a big article about a woman in Britain in 1756 who started a ceramics company in London, England. Eleanor Code, the Code Stone, and they were making architectural pieces for all kinds of buildings, planters for Kew Gardens, monuments for Admiral Nelson, on and on and on. And in the studies I did, and I traveled to Britain and went to the British Museum, we realized that she was using ground glass in the clay. And the ground glass was like, if you're a baker and you understand oatmeal cookies, if you don't put much sugar in, you get a soggy cookie. Put a little more sugar in, and that cookie's the sugar melts, and it binds the cookie together. It makes it a nice hard cookie. Crunchy. Well, that's what I do with my clay. I put a little frit in, it melts really hard, becomes non-porous, and you can make frost-free clay. I did a monument in Sydney, Nova Scotia. It's been outside now for 10 years, and there's no degradation. And it's earthenware clay. It's my own version of Code Stone. So I keep my energy footprint down, although I have to rely on this frit, this chemical that comes as an adjunct to the ceramics industry. But recently I've realized that we're surrounded all the time with ceramic products that are often one use and disposable. Wine bottles, the clear glass bottles that mayonnaise comes in, blah, 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 blah. And I've started a series of experiments grinding those up and using them as a glaze. I bought this gizmo. Do you see this? Can you guys see that?
The like metal kettle looking thing device there?
It looks like a blender. I'm not going to turn it on. I thought maybe I would turn it on, but I realized, no, you don't need to hear that. It's a commercial spice grinder. Very expensive, from a company called Vivor in Quebec, like under $200. And I can put a broken wine bottle in there. I like to use Pinot Grigio. It's a light fruity wine, blah, blah, blah. But what I get is frit. I get the ceramic materials. And I mix that with common household products like borax. I get a glaze. So all of those materials that are mined and used for the commercial glass industry, I'm realizing I can deconstruct those and put them to use. So I'm starting to put that back into my clay. It's not exactly the most economical way for somebody who's in business to operate a business, because it does take time and it is experimental. Some of them work, some of them don't. But I think my position as a senior statesman, I can afford to do the research and publish that.
Well, there you go. And share your
I
knowledge with
get
us.
excited about it. I am that kind of crafty nerd.
Oh, that's perfect.
I'm trying to lower my footprint by firing at a lower temperature and recycle as many materials. I'm also trompsing through the woods looking for clay outcrops. Going straight to the source, to Elmsdale, to the Lance Brick Company, Shaw Brick Company.
Yeah.
Is a great way to get clay. And that's another thing we're all doing out here, is trying to use more of the local clay.
Right. Local clay, recycled materials. Great combination, it sounds like.
Low temperature.
Sorry, Doug. Dorothée, I know that recycling is also part of the work that you do in goldsmithing, and I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that practice and about some of maybe the myths around sustainability in jewelry that you come up against.
Yeah, Doug, I'm a little jealous because, of course, there are gold mines in Nova Scotia opening up a new one, and wouldn't it be great to have local gold that I can use? But no, you cannot, because all the gold that's mined locally goes into the great big melting pot in big refineries, and there is no traceability whatsoever. The only traceable gold is fair mined or fair
Mm.
trade, or there are some alluvial golds that my supplier in Germany can source, like from various rivers, which is cool. I have actually also some Yukon hand panned gold in
Mm.
the studio. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you, Doug, about talking about wanting to make a difference, because I was in the same boat, and um, I was very proud of myself. I hired a local consultant, the preeminent North American consultant in sustainable jewelry practices to do an audit of my studio practices for an
Mhm.
entire month. We went through everything, and the first thing I told her is, yeah, that I use my old bed sheets on my old towels. I tear them up into small bits so I don't have to use paper towel, and I carbon offset, my shipments, and all these kind of. I have a heat pump in here now, so I don't pollute with my beautiful wood stove. And she said, yeah, really, none of this is making a difference very much. I'm sorry.
Mm.
You have to ask questions about the materials. And that investigation then led me to looking into recycled gold and the truth and issues with recycled gold. And part of the problem with that, and it's in that film, The Shadow of Gold, it's made
Mhm.
very clear, and there's a lot of facts in there about how recycled gold that you can buy from your supplier. Recycled is really a misnomer. It's
Right.
repurposed gold. It comes from scrap and bullion.
Mhm.
It's very easy to money launder that way for people, for criminal organizations, especially from other countries. And it's you have no idea if it's ethical or not. The recycling process itself can be ethical, and there are suppliers who will you have an SES certification for their
Mhm.
recycling process, which is definitely a leg up. It's definitely better than those who don't have that. There's one supplier I work with in the States, Hoover and Strong. They have the tightest control because they only recycle gold from their own clients. And there are certain states from where they will not accept gold because
Mm.
of the practices in that particular state. So you have a lot of choices to look at, uh, you know, what you want to source and how you can talk about it. It's incredibly important not to greenwash. There
Mm.
is the opportunity to recycle in-house, but the issue is with that is most people think you can just take gold and melt it and make something new, and you can, but the chances of that piece then having porosity issues are very high. You
Right.
also don't know what the alloys are in there, so you don't know what kind of toxicity you're introducing into your studio at that time. So I personally don't do that. If I take clients' gold, I send it to the refinery, and then they will make it into the alloy that pure gold or the alloy that I'm asking for. There's a big movement afoot now to change the wording actually for like the Responsible Jewelry Council is
Mm.
really working on that to not have that be a term, because when you think recycled you think, oh, pop bottles, good, this is like we're
Ah.
recycling a glass like Doug is. He's actually recycling the glass. Or I have clothing from a company in Vancouver where they unravel uh, wool shirts and then
Sure.
sort them by color, respin that. That's recycling.
Mhm.
But with gold, that's not the case. So one has to be careful unless you're doing it in house and
Okay.
adding clean new gold to it. That's a possibility, but then you're changing your alloy number. So it's a tricky one.
And it sounds like even the term recycling there almost sounds like it's a greenwashing itself. It's
That's
like
right.
misleading, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
same with like with diamonds, natural diamonds. Everybody says, "Oh well, you
Ah.
followed the Kimberley process," and the Kimberley process, which is a form of uh, watching sourcing for diamonds, natural
Yeah.
diamonds. Even that has been found to no longer be sufficient because it just says that. Anyways, it's complicated. I don't want to get into it. But the Kimberley process no longer sufficient. You need to know, as the slide said earlier, just like with gold, you need to know where your gemstones are coming from if you want to be super ethical about it. And it's just, it's important.
And where do lab-grown gems and diamonds fit into this conversation of
Excellent
sustainability and
question.
ethics?
It's such a problem because the amount of greenwashing, interestingly, using the word of something is ethical, a material is ethical or sustainable, is in Europe is illegal. It's illegal to use that term unless you can prove it. Which is where we need to get to, because I see lots of people saying, oh, they're ethical, sustainable, and so many people think that lab-grown diamonds are more ethical because they're basically grown in a microwave, synthetic diamonds. The truth of the matter is they are grown under, most of them, under just terrible conditions, terrible environmental conditions, terrible labor conditions, lots of problems. So the only lab-grown diamonds that I can put my name behind are, again, SCS certified lab-grown diamonds, where there is a certification body that pays attention to how that company that's growing them is growing them. The sad thing is that those companies that keep being bought out, and then the tracing disappears. So I had a company that I was sourcing from which captured carbon emissions in the Swiss Alps and transformed it carbon as what diamonds are made from.
Yeah.
So they captured the carbon emissions and made them into diamonds, and all their facility was entirely green energy run, and they were B Corp and all this stuff, and then again sold out to another company. Or there's a company in the UK, Sky Diamonds, I think, which I was very excited about their story, but they're only selling to one guy, one big shot designer in the UK, and they're not selling to a small company like me. So it's very tricky.
It sounds very fraught. Now, Doug, we're talking about in your bio on your site, you're talking not just about your interest in Nova Scotian materials, but you're interested a lot in the history of Nova Scotia and perhaps the connection to environmental behavior there. You write that European and African settlement in the region, their interactions with Indigenous peoples, the use of African labor, French and English classes, and questionable environmental behavior. These are sort of things we're thinking about. So how do you understand these histories in Nova Scotia in relation to environmental behavior, and how does these histories of Nova Scotia come into your practice?
Whew. Did I really say that? Actually, I think that bio was written around the time that I built a sculpture on Goddardson Street.
Oh, okay.
It was the intention of that public art. As with most public art, there's a mandate. You've got that call was to commemorate the history of the Goddardson Street within Halifax.
Of course, yeah.
So that, of course, was a confluence of Nova Scotian Black culture, colonialism at its height, militarism, because it was a garrison, and no record of any native settlement, which had been just left out of history, as we do so often, and lots of environmental degradation. But anyways, I realized when I was building that monument that if I was simply going to fulfill the mandate to commemorate the history, it would be a history of British garrison. Everything would be, Cornwallis this and I wasn't going to do that. So I chose to build a text in the grid of some streets with names of the institutions, like the Cornwallis Black Baptist Church, which was the core and the heart of that community for so long. An unfortunate name nowadays, but still, It was the largest Black Baptist congregation in North America for a while. A very important institution. On and on and on. But still, I think that way when I'm working. Unfortunately, I haven't found that many ways to incorporate that kind of ethos into my ceramic work, with the exception of my dedication to brown earthenware.
Mm-hmm.
After a lifetime of working in ceramics, as you know, ceramics has quite a long history. And there's a large area of ceramics practice that is very white. It's porcelain. It's pure.
Mm-hmm.
It's as white as Uncle Ben's bread. There was a period in our civilization development where the whiter the material, be it your food or the clothes you wear, the closer you were to God, the more pure you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think materials have meaning. So I choose to work with a darker colored clay that doesn't have that that stigmatic construction of purity and value and all that stuff. So I guess that's one way I'm incorporating that idea.
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to.
Sorry, carry on.
No, you go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
No, it is something I think about a lot. And I have the privilege as a senior artist. I don't need to make a living from my work anymore. I do have to supplement it. I can't just do this for nothing. So I do like to sell work. But so I do feel it's incumbent upon me to be thinking as opposed to being in business and just producing all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm very privileged.
Well, this other role you have, Doug, is one of teacher, of mentor, right? From your work as a technician to the work you do now in Member County. So, like, how do you talk about, I don't know, these sustainable practices around energy usage, around kind of local materials, around recycling? Like, how do you talk to students about these practices?
Kind of like a Baptist preacher. I'm an earthenware evangelist. You do this and you're closer to God. That way's wrong. This way's right. That's how it goes.
Smashing porcelain on the floor.
Oh yeah. I talk about it. It's very unpopular. Because
It's unpopular?
Yeah, it is, because most people don't want to get into the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of the material they're using. The suppliers sell a very, very good kit. You buy this clay, you use this glaze, you fire at this temperature, everything's going to work, it's guaranteed. And that is great. But in talking with the suppliers that I've been buying from for 50 odd years, I mean, I've been at this game for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I say, would you like my research? Would you like to produce this Nova Scotian earthenware that's fritted, that's hard, that's dense, that's frost-free? And they go, no. Mm-hmm. Doug, you weirdos in Nova Scotia are the only ones who want to work with earthenware. We couldn't sell that to the rest of the country. They're all hooked on our Cone 6 supply. So it's a supply chain issue, largely. Because not everybody has the luxury, like I do, of having a clay mixer, and I can make my own clay and experiment like that. I hope that my hope is that one of the good things that could come out of this current American administration is a need for us to become more material independent. Because almost everything we use comes from the USA. And I think it's time that we started producing our own materials here, and that could mark a real shift in the efficacy and the importance of greener approach to ceramics. Ceramics does not have a green history at all. It's not. It's very energy dependent, and mining practices are not so good. It'd be great to see that change. In fact, I recently had a very unofficial meeting with some of the local clay people, and they expressed an interest in possibly supplying Nova Scotian clay to the market. So I thought
To
that
the market?
to the market, to potters.
Yeah, to potters. Okay. So
Yeah.
maybe good things are happening.
Good things may come of this. Yeah.
Okay.
I could actually say something about that as well.
Yeah, please.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Doug, yeah, I didn't mention earlier when we talked about gemstones that, of course, there are lots of gemstones in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Specifically agate and amethyst mostly. There's like Amethyst Cove up by, like Blomidon that way.
Yeah.
And lots of those. So I happen to not be working with those, but it's a great opportunity, and the Parsborough Gem Fair is a good place to go for those. Hans Dursling here locally cuts stones, so that's a local option, like you're saying, Doug.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to kind of also respond to that Doug said is that I also believe that the way we can affect change is by asking our suppliers to give us better, more sustainable options. That's the biggest way in which we can affect change, as those people who are putting the money on the table to order those materials. If we say, do you have something more ethical? What do you know about the tracing of this? Where did this come from? What's the footprint? Questions like that. I think that's how we really can affect a lot of change.
Well, Dorothée, you were saying when you hired this consultant that you were doing all of these things that should on paper be really environmentally friendly, but then when it gets to the actual, like, where the biggest impact happens is in these larger industries, right, in the supply chain. And so there is obviously personal responsibility we all have as artists to think sustainably, to think ethically, but yes, like the major change has to happen at these higher levels, it sounds like. So when you're talking to, I know that you've spoken to NASCAD students, and I don't know if you have kind of mentorship roles also as a jeweler, but what do you say to new jewelers, young jewelers who are maybe similar to what Doug was saying, that maybe they feel kind of it feels too challenging to be entering into these ethical considerations, that they're either financially or otherwise restrained, and what do you tell them in those moments?
Be brave.
Hmm.
That's a really big one for me. I find that people, especially coming out of school, they're often, even just before they even enter the like more ethical or just status quo question, they're often hesitant to buy materials, and the same amount of, it's very different from ceramics. In our practice, jewelry practice, the same amount of labor and work goes into making something out of copper or silver or gold. In fact, it's a lot easier to work with gold because there's less oxidization. And students are often, or fresh out of university, fresh out of NASCAD, they're often hesitant to invest in the gold. And I tell you, you got to do it, because there is a perceived value in that metal. It also will last longer, and you just get a better result. And then, as I was saying earlier, if in order to be, this is an incredibly competitive market. I'm sure you've all been to craft shows. Everybody is a jeweler. There's so many jewelers. Every person coming to the craft show says, why are there so many jewelers? Because there are. This is, and it's hard to get into craft shows as a jeweler because there are so many. So how are you going to set yourself apart? And this sustainability story, like truly sustainable, being a truly ethical jeweler, is a really, really good angle to sell your work, but you have to be brave. There are licensing fees. There are reporting duties. Of course, this is a third-party audited process, which means every time I buy Fairmine gold, I also need to report that to one central organization, and the refinery selling me this gold is also reporting, and then an auditing company, an auditing body checks to make sure that we're all saying the same thing. So that is how you have traceability. So it's extra work, it's extra money, it's not cheap, it's hundreds of dollars a year. And then sourcing. We're in Nova Scotia, we're in a complete desert of support services or suppliers for jewelers. It's really terrible. If I lived in Toronto or Vancouver, I could be walking down the street to a diamond supplier. I could be going, over to the chain merchant. But here, everything comes from away, and I have the choice to either buy my Fairmine gold from Hoover and Strong in the U.S. at a very high price, even higher. Of course, this gold is more expensive than regular gold because you're paying for the miners to have decent lives. So it's more expensive to begin with. There's a licensing fee, reporting, and then you have to get this gold somewhere. So I can get it from the States. It's easy, but it's a very high price. In Toronto, there is Malleable Jewelers. They're the kind of the fair trade gold company in Toronto is kind of the leader. They were the first ones. But Malleable, John, he's spoken at NASCAR also. He will source gold for you, but it's more expensive, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I chose to get my gold either from my supplier in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
The insured shipping is 180 euros. Like you gotta order a lot of gold to make that worthwhile.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at a huge amount of money that you're investing. Or I ordered directly from Colombia, from the refinery there, the Fairmine licensed refinery there. I felt really good about that. And my learning curve was, if I import as a goldsmith, if I import grains of gold called casting grain, like little
little
blobs,
double, yeah.
It's considered bullion. And the Colombia refinery decided to roll their pure gold into a sheet, and they sent it to me as sheet. So, and I ordered, because the shipping is so expensive, and I was looking at the gold price, so I ordered as much as I could possibly afford, which was something like $14,000 worth of gold at that time.
Wow.
And they sent it in sheet form, and so I was taxed on it because it's a finished product. That makes a big difference at that price. So this is another learning curve, being able to do the right paperwork, knowing even how to wire transfer securely to Colombia. Like, all of these things have been a huge learning curve. I'm very happy to mentor, so people are always welcome to get in touch with me and ask me questions, for sure. But yeah, be brave is the main lesson.
Well, it's interesting to talk to both of you about this, because we're almost getting kind of contradictory or kind of diverging advice here, or depending on the discipline. Like, Dorothée, like you were saying, that while there are Nova Scotian or Canadian processes here, they're maybe not to the standard of ethics that we might be looking for in our jewelry practices. And Doug, meanwhile, you're shifting towards local materials. And so, but what you have in common is that you're both working in Nova Scotia, and you're both working in a time where we're feeling really squeezed in Nova Scotia, right? We're getting the government is really squeezing us. And I think this idea of bravery is probably very topical for lots of artists in the province right now. So, Doug, kind of riffing off of what Dorothée was saying, do you have things you tell students to be, like, ways they can be brave, or ways they can be kind of creative in this stressful economic time for artists in Nova Scotia?
Oh yeah. Stay in school. No, the real thing is, I think I'm pretty frank with all people who are entering the field, that making a living doing it is tough. It's just really, really hard. But if you study and you really, really learn as much as you can about your area, you will become, if nothing else, an expert.
Mm.
You'll become an expert in your field. You may never sell anything. And then NASCAD undergrad degree, your BFA, is a first step. Then, come on, you can go on and do some other courses in arts admin or curatorial studies. You don't have to be on the market. Marketing art in Canada is hard. It's just damn hard. It's a very different culture than in Europe or the USA. And we also, Canadians have a psyche where we really do feel we're the frontier. So let's go mining. Let's harvest timber.
Right,
we don't make things here. My father's generation were the last generation who believed they were going to be builders.
Mm.
They were going to make stuff in Canada. At Expo 67, you all remember that, don't you? Was an expo about how brilliant Canadians were and how we were going to be the leaders in manufacturing, building arrows and space exploration and everything. And after Expo 67, there was a huge shift. I won't name the political party that brought that on, but we went back to relying on just harvesting and selling the raw materials elsewhere and not making stuff. So, the idea that you're going to be a successful potter and have a nice house in the country and blah, 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 might not be realistic. There are people who do it. There are people who, and I know people who do it, but they generally come from a farm background where they're used to getting up at dawn, going to work, and not quitting till the sun goes down. The successful artists I know work their butts off. They're hard driven people. And not all of us are like that. So become an expert in your field and take it from there. And love it passionately and learn everything you can about it. But you might not be working in that field.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah. Please.
This is great. We're such a good team, Doug, because I would say exactly the opposite. Just to get it back to the beginning of the question in the beginning of, where were we at NASCAD and what were we doing? And I think you asked how did things change? And one of the pivotal moments in my life as an artist was when somebody said to me, would you put some gemstones in this? I said, no, I'm not working with gemstones. The form has to speak for itself. But if I hadn't put gemstones in, I would not be still making jewelry. I've been making jewelry for over 20 years. This is my sole income, other than I have a little apartment in my house. But yeah, this is how I do it. And I do it by making wearable, beautiful, durable, well-built, blah, 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 with the most sustainable materials that I can muster. And that's just another way to go, and you have to be a little bit. I will admit there's a compromise. I can't make art jewelry because it's not going to sell, but I can make a living doing this, partially because there are grants here in Nova Scotia. The Creative Industries Industry Growth Grant is a fantastic one. They're really great people there. You can ask them questions. You can ask me questions about it, and it's possible to do it if this is what you want to do as a living and not have a waitressing job and make jewelry. People stop making, especially in jewelry, people stop making jewelry. I see it again and again and again, unless they do it really in a way in which they can make some money, and that becomes a pricing thing. And please talk to me. I love to preach about pricing. It's just another way, Doug. I think.
I agree, Dorothée. I think there are many ways to approach this. Yeah. And you're one of those hardworking people who gets up at dawn, who doesn't quit, and would not be happy in an arts administration job or running your own gallery and selling other people's work, or
Yeah.
the many, many other ways an expert in the jewelry field could be earning a living without sitting at a bench all day. There's different approaches to it. I'm not saying don't go to art college. I think it's the best education you're ever going to get.
Yes.
I mean, basically, when we go to study, and studying is a lot of history. Art history is the most fascinating way to learn about history.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I hated history in high school because it was like the dates of battles and adversarial behavior. Art is different. It's about a reaction to shifting paradigms and different borders and all this kind of stuff. It's fascinating that way, and how it kind of triumphs over adversity. I mean, honestly, the French Revolution, the artists were all working for the King of France or the church. Both those institutions disappeared and art flourished. This is the key. Become an expert in your field and go off and don't just be the best, most entertaining barista in Toronto. You run the art gallery of Ontario.
Don't forget
like Molly's going to do.
The trip we were both on to Greece with Paul Greenhalgh at the time. He had me completely convinced that I was going to be the jewelry historian internationally, and that's what I was going to do, to study at the Victoria and Albert Museum. And honestly, I could have done that also. It would have been great, but I was busy having babies and such like. But yeah, well, I hear you.
Yeah, you could have done that, but you didn't, and that's not a big deal.
Both is good.
It's a great. The thing is, I think a lot of lay people assume that what goes on at NASCAD is a whole lot of knitting and picking and navel gazing and farting around, but it's not. There's some real serious learning and education that's really seminal in creating what I would call Canadian culture. There are seeds of what it is to be a Canadian. Now, I don't want to get on the regional high horse because that's not my place either, but we're special up here. We're different. And I think becoming a Canadian artist accentuates that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming to us.
I agree. Okay. Stay in Nova Scotia, stay in school. Email Doug and
None of
Dorothée.
us stay in Nova Scotia. Oh no, travel.
Okay. Yeah.
And realize how lucky you are to be here when you do come back or whatever. No, it's important to learn about the world. Absolutely.
Agreed. Well, thank you, Doug and Dorothée, so much for joining us today. And please join us next time for our next artwork. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Questions.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Wonderful job. Bye.